Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Very good morning. Welcome to second day FTP program on artificial intelligence for agri sector, fourth industrial revolution perspective. I would like to welcome to today's our resource person, Shisha sir from IIC Bengaluru. A very good morning, sir. Shisha sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Very good morning, sir. I myself, this is Dr. Venugopal, assistant professor from Indian Institute of Plantation Management. I once again, on behalf of FTP team and IAPM and myself as a coordinator, I heartily welcome to you, sir, for FTP program. It's very nice to have you in this prestigious project, sponsored by the Atal Academy, AICT, together. I'm sure that today's session going to be a wonderful session for our participants. Still, it may come, sir, maybe they'll join. Maybe 70 plus regular participants are going to be participating in all the sessions. I think we will start, sir. Maybe middle they'll come, like 5 or 10 minutes they'll start. I would like call upon FTP team people. Asha, can you just give a briefing about our resource person, Shisha sir?
Yes, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, please carry.
Good morning to all the participants. We are very much privileged to conduct this faculty development program on AI for agriculture sector, fourth industrial revolution. And on behalf of our institute, IIPM Bangalore, I welcome all of you to this great section. Agriculture is the backbone of every economy, yet this sector needs a huge upgradation in order to survey the changing conditions of Indian economy. So this morning, we have a resource person, Dr. Shishir from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, to deal with the reinforcement machine learning for agriculture sector. Dr. Shishir is working in the Robert Bosch Center for Cyber Physical Systems in IIS. He is also exploring the confluence of learning and control via deep reinforcement learning-based methods for legged robots. Prior to this, he worked with MISO Robotics on the 6th DOF ARM project in California. Mr. Shishir has a doctoral degree from Georgia Institute of Technology, USA, and he has more than 5 journal publications and 21 conference publications and received a Best Paper Award for his seminar work on dynamic multi-domain bipedal walking with Atrias through sleep-based human-inspired control in the proceedings of 17th International Conference on Hybrid Systems. Dr. Shishir is also a facilitator who have conducted more than 15 seminars and presentations. Sir, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce you in this morning. I hope you would have a great time interacting with all the participants. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Dr. Venugopal, also for introducing me at the beginning.
Thank you, sir.
So this is a great opportunity for me to interact with the people with agricultural background, mostly, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So obviously, my dad has been a farmer for a long time. He's a retired scientist from Directorate of Cashew Research. So I have a lot of connections with farming and farmers. Even though I'm not a farmer myself, I'm trying my best to use technology, bringing technology into the field of agriculture. I have a long way to go, but we will see how it goes. So let me begin the presentation. So let me share screen. Shall I share screen now?
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. I make you as a co-host, right?
Oh, yeah, correct. Okay, so continue. Let's see.
Shall I close my sharing, sir?
Yeah, please close. Let's see.
Yeah, now we can close.
Okay, let me open the PowerPoint. Okay, share screen. Okay. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Visible, sir.
Okay, let me try to do play presentation. Do you still see the screen?
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
Which
Yes.
slide are you seeing now? Slide 2 or slide 1?
I think slide 2, sir. Slide 2.
Slide 3? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the slide transition is happening.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, good morning, everyone. Like I said, it's a great opportunity for me to interact with the people with the farming background. So it's not just me. Karthik is also joining.
Sir, I think not only for farmers, sir, like all computer related background and engineering background, all
Oh,
participants are there. Yes, sir.
Oh,
All
okay.
are there.
Great.
All are there.
So okay, in that case, it's a great opportunity for me to interact with people with a diverse set of backgrounds.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so it's not just me today. Karthik, are you there? He will also be joining me in explaining some of the.
Yes, sir. Robotics something, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I think Karthik.
Karthik, are you there? Can you unmute yourself? And
So Karthik is not there, I think.
oh, he's not joined yet. Okay.
Yeah, joined.
Okay. Okay. I'm hoping that he will join later on.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Let me start. Okay. So yeah. So like what the introducer mentioned. So my focus here is actually reinforcement learning for the field of agriculture. I wanted to be a little more specific, and that's the reason why I put walking robots here for advanced mobility. So one second. I don't see the slides. One second. You are able to see the slide?
Now we are not seeing, sir. Now it is not seen.
Oh.
Not visible.
This is a real problem.
Yes, sir. Yes, yes. Some technical.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, yes, sir. It is visible now.
But I'm not able to. Okay. I'm not able to click play.
Yeah, it is. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're able to see the second slide, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So my focus here is actually robotics and machine learning. So I mentioned reinforcement learning. So I will talk about reinforcement learning towards the later part of this talk. But my main background is actually robotics. So I've done a lot of work on robotic systems. And to bring you some perspective on robotic systems, like as to where we are in terms of robotic systems compared to machine learning, I wanted to show this graph. So here we can see this growth, this exponential growth in machine learning in AI. So from 2016 to 2020, and then with the prediction till 2025, right? We are seeing an exponential growth in this field. We are seeing a similar trend in the field of robotics. We are seeing an exponential growth also in the field of robotics. So here is the graph showing the total number of robots that are operating worldwide. We can see that we are close to 2.7 million units right now, and it's going to grow even more. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so we are seeing a similar growth in robotics, right? And that's the reason why I wanted to bring this attention, right? And more recently, we are seeing something very interesting, and that is the reduction in the cost of robots and robot parts. What used to be close to 35 lakh rupees, 35 to 40 lakh rupees, now costs close to 10 lakh rupees for an industrial robot manipulator like this, Fanuc, right? What used to be what used to be close to 25 lakh rupees for a UR5 arm is actually close to less than 5 lakh now. Similar trends are going on in the field of sensors like LiDARs, motion capture systems, drones, not to forget, right? There are drones all over the country now. So we are seeing this huge reduction in the cost, and this is not something that we can ignore, right? In other words, the reason for bringing this slide is because India being economically not so strong like the Western countries, right? We cannot afford high prices, and especially in the field of agriculture. This trend is actually going to bring India in the field of robotics, right? We're going to be able to use robots in the field of agriculture quite extensively. And it's not just agriculture that I'm talking about. I'm talking about medical robotics. I'm talking about defense. I'm talking about transportation, construction, and so on and so forth. But especially agriculture, why? Because we need to drive the costs really low, right? And we are actually seeing it. In other words, in the next few years, we are going to see a growing increase of the use of robotics in the field of agriculture. And as you all know, drones are already in use. One second. Let me mute this. Drones are already in use. In the field of agriculture for spraying applications, right? So we are seeing something similar here. So how much do the industrial arms cost in 2014, right? Since 2014, the prices have dropped by 25%, right? We are seeing that the drones are reduced to half a price. That was a year ago. Cruise acquires Strobe to help dramatically reduce LiDAR costs. So cruise control is also bringing the LiDAR cost down by close to almost 90%, right? So that's the reason why robotics, right? And I have done a lot of work on robotics, and this is a quick look at my background. So I started with this little dancing robots. This was actually during my undergraduate years, where the goal here was to trying to realize dancing on this little robot. Are you able to hear the music?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, great. Yeah, so this is something that I did as an undergraduate student. And this is what I have as a PhD student. I continue doing work on this, and this is what I have, right? So I've done a lot of work on trying to achieve walking robots, realizing walking robots for a lot of applications. And this is one example where we show it can achieve a bunch of behaviors and even dance to the music, right? But my main PhD thesis was actually running. So this is showing the running robot. So here is a picture of this robot on the left, where I'm actually sitting in the background trying to control the robot, and I'm also assisted by two other people, right? And here the goal is to try to stabilize the running rate by reducing a bunch of uncertainties, right? Here it's actually phase uncertainty, and as you can see, after trying to reduce the uncertainty, in other words, improve robustness, we are able to achieve running. Are you able to see the entire slide? I hope you can.
Yes, sir. We are seeing.
Okay, the whole slide, right? Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, so as a postdoc, I've done a lot of work on trying to bring the robots into the industry. So this is an example of a robot used in a restaurant industry. Right here, this robot is actually moving its spatula from one point to another, trying to move it here and there, and then also trying to flip it over. So we can see that the comparison between the human and the robot is remarkably very close. In other words, it's super fast, right? Okay. So with that, let me talk about a robot. So what is a robot? I use this definition from Wikipedia. A robot is a machine, especially when programmable by computer, capable of carrying out a complex series of actions automatically, right? And if you look at the origin of the term robot, it was first applied as a term for artificial automata in 1920. The word robot itself was not new, having been in the Slavic language as robota, which means robot labor, forced labor, right? So we treat robots as laborers, as a slave, right? Now the question is, can we use legged robots in the field of agriculture? And is it even possible? And here is a little example, little video, which I actually took from my dad's farm. Like I mentioned, my dad is a farmer, and he has been working on this for quite a long time. And this is an example of this fertilizer being carried using this petrol powered cart, right? And he is able to do it with ease, but it requires a path, right? And also notice the other person, the person here actually is carrying the pipe, right? To make the way, to clear the way for this one, right? So this is something that we have to be thinking about, right? Like when it comes to wheeled systems, this pipe is in the way and this is causing a problem, right? Now, there are quite a few applications that we can think of, right? And especially one with surveillance. So here is one example of this robot where we can think of using a camera and trying to monitor the plants. So for a farmer, right, he immediately will see that by looking at this pepper plant, right, he will see that this has a problem and that is a nutrition problem because one leaf is showing yellow in color, right? So this is something that farmers are well versed with, right? So every day they go outside, look at each and every plant. They have to tend to each and every plant, right? They need to make sure that every plant is growing well, right? And if there is a problem, then they try to fix it, right? Now, this is something that we expect a farmer to do. Now, the goal is to have a robot do something similar, right? And not just that, the robot has to be able to go across all kinds of terrains, right? And not like this terrain, any kind of arbitrary terrain that is seen on a farm, right? Here is another example of a legged robot that can be potentially of use. As you can see the picture of a Raikkonen, right? And at the bottom left, if you are able to see, there is a person standing there, right? And that's my father. He is looking at the areca nut at the top of the tree and he wants it, right? So this is something, I use this figuratively to show the importance of using a climbing robot to harvest all the produce at the top of the tree. So we would like to bring in the technology in this field, right? Similarly, in the field of grafting, there's a lot of potential use of making this happen. And lots of other kinds of farms, right? So my goal here was to try to bring in a one device solution, right? Something like a human, right? So on the one side, we have this tiller being used to till the paddy field, right? And here we can see that the person is using a remote control to do it. So this is one potential application. Here is the other application where there is this farmer who is using this climbing device to go up the tree, right? Now, when I look at these two things, these are all very effective solutions, very customized solutions. I was thinking of, okay, why not come up with one device solution to figure out, to solve all these problems, right? On one hand, we have drones, on the other hand, we have tractors and lots of other devices. Now, can we think of using a legged system, say a farm dog or a farm humanoid system, right? That can do a multitude of tasks. The reason is simple. If we have one device and it's able to do a multitude of operations, costs are much lower, right? It's one hardware, but a multitude of tasks, right? And that's the reason why I use this robot, right? I bring in this idea of using a walking robot, right? So we have a four-legged robot which can walk on all kinds of terrains. If you want to do surveillance, we put a camera. If you want to do some harvesting, we put an arm on this robot. If you want it to climb the tree, we simply write a new controller, and the robot can use the same set of legs to climb the tree, right? So this is the solution that I was thinking of, although we have a long way to go, right? And especially when it comes to climbing, it's an extremely complicated problem. It's an extremely harder problem to solve, right? So the moment we talk about this setting, there are thousands of technical challenges, starting from AI machine learning to real-time control to visual odometry to efficient actuation to stabilizing control laws to rough terrain navigation, safety critical control, path planning, and so on and so forth. right? So my solution here is to use a stock series of robots, right? So the quadruped stock 1 and stock 2 were indigenously developed in IAC, and I want to talk about how we can build on top of this to a farm situation. So just a disclaimer, I do not have any solution right now for the field of agriculture. I just wanted to indicate where I'm potentially going, right, with these robots. So now I'm going to switch my attention towards how to realize walking in these robots, right? So now so one reason is because I do not have a lot of results to show in the field of agriculture. In fact, I have none. Although I'm going towards it, I have a long way to go towards it, right? So like I mentioned, there are potential use cases for this kind of a platform, and there are technical challenges to be solved first before we even talk about using this in the field of agriculture. And that is where I am right now, right? I hope this is clear. So we have these two robots, right? Now the first step is to realize walking in these robots, right? And that is what the whole presentation will be about. So I will pause here for a moment to take any questions if there are any. Any questions? Okay, I'm assuming no questions. If there are no questions, I will set the goal just to set the tone of this presentation. So the goal is to realize walking in the robot stock 1 and stock 2. So this is what I'm going to focus on, and this is what we have been working on for the past 2 years. We have come a long way. So let me start with this outline. So first I'll talk about general robot models. And I think it's important that I introduce everyone to the idea of robot model, right? And then I will talk about results on stock and stock 2, right? Okay, so let me talk about the robot models. So we have a simple manipulator, right? And in this manipulator, so we can see there is a base, there is link 1, link 2, etc., link I-1. There is a link n-1, right? And then finally there is an end effector, right? So we have a series of links and then a series of joints, right? And this is actually a classic robot manipulator system that we are interested in. So here we have an end effector, right? And we are interested in how to use this end effector, how to move this end effector from one point to another, right? And the control is on the joints, right? So there are several types of joints that we can think of. Here there are two examples. One is revolute, another one is prismatic joint. The way we are going to do this is we have n. So we need to move the prismatic joints and we need to move the revolute joints, right? And then we apply some actuation on this in such a way that the end effector is moved accordingly, right? So we have n links, in other words, n rigid bodies, right? And then we have n actuators, right? Now, when we think of n links, there are 6 n parameters. So when I say parameter, I'm simply pointing to the possible types of motions that are available, right? So let's consider a rigid body. So for a rigid body, there are 3 types of positions and 3 types of orientations that are possible, right? So in other words, we have 6 positions and orientations, right? So I call them parameters, right? And because there are n rigid bodies, we have 6 n parameters, right? So like there are 6 n parameters and then there are 5 n constraints. So how do I get 5 n constraints? Because each joint constrains the parameters to only 1. So adding a joint is equivalent to removing the 5 parameters, right? So in other words, I have 5 n parameters or 5 n constraints, which I subtract from the 6 n parameters to get the n degrees of freedom, right? Now with this, the goal is to achieve translation. In other words, move the end effector from one point to another. So translation is one example. So move from frame A to frame B, right? And we have a vector that gets connected from one point to another. And we change the position description of a point P. right? And then with these two vectors, we try to do this mapping, right? And accordingly, we need to actuate the joints, right? So we have end effector configuration parameters, right? Let's say we have a set of parameters, position, orientation, right? So we have X position, Y position, Z position. If you are familiar with these terminologies, X, Y, and Z, and then orientation, OX, OY, and OZ. So we have M parameters that completely specifies the end effector position and orientation with respect to O, right? And we have this operational coordinates, right? So, and then we have this configuration parameters. So we have the number of degrees of freedom of the end effector, right? So with this, the goal is to apply appropriate control on the joints in such a way that we get the desired position and configuration in the operational space, right? On the left hand side, we have theta1, we have theta2, theta3, etc., right? And accordingly, we have on the right hand side the operational space. Okay, so let me pause here again. Was this clear, or were you able to follow? Or was it just too complex to understand? Any inputs? Okay, I'm going to call some names if I don't get a response. So, Vadiraj, any question?
Sir, joints and all are means when it comes to joints and the axle, so the movement itself is a big problem. Then how can we understand these things?
Movement itself is a big problem. Then?
Sir?
Yeah. Tell me, I was not able to follow.
Yeah, means when it comes to joints and the coordinated movement. So when we are talking about space and all, so when we have hinges and joints, what happens? It might overlap. Then how can we coordinate the space and all? That I am not getting.
So each joint only constrains 5 n parameters, right?
Yes.
In other words, there is still room for playing with that one parameter. So theta1 is like, is that one parameter that you are trying to vary using that joint, right? So theta1 increases from 0 to some maximum value, right? Accordingly, the link above it, right, also moves accordingly.
Okay, sir.
And we do this for theta1, theta2, theta3, etc., in such a way that endpoint, XY position is according.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So, any other questions? Okay. So, let me go. Okay. So, similarly, we have this concept of rotation. So, I talked about translation, right? There is also this notion of rotation of the end effector, because the way I pick a system, pick an item, the orientation is actually very, very important, right? So, we have this rotation matrix, and then we want to apply this rotation on the system, right? So, so I hope you are able to, I know this is a little too much to take in, but I wanted to point out how we can do these operations. And there is this matrix called an orthonormal matrix, which we use to realize these kinds of orientations, right? So let me just say this, because more than this would be too much. Okay, and also to point out, it's not just positions, orientations that we care. We care about dynamics. In other words, we need to make sure that the Newton's laws of motions are all well satisfied, right? And all the forces are being meaningful, right? So we have Newton-Euler formulation, we have the Lagrangian formulation, we have the generalized constraint coordinates, and then we have this kinetic energy, right? So this all of this goes back to 12th standard physics, right? We need to make sure that the physics is meaningful, right? So with these kinds of formulations, what we do is we have different kinds of forces being applied on each and every joint, right? In other words, when a force F is applied on a joint, that F gets applied to the link, the parent link, and then the successor link, right? And this is happening in a repetitive fashion, right? So with this and with the Newton's laws of motion, right? And with the extension of Newton's laws of motion to the field of rotation, right? We apply the dynamics, right? So this slide is again to indicate, right, the kind of dynamics that is going on, right? So finally, after we do all of these calculations of these dynamics, we end up getting this equation in the middle, right? The one in the rectangle. So this is our dynamics of this system. So here we talk about accelerations. Here we talk about velocities and positions. We talk about gravity. We talk about the torques, right? So there are a lot of things happening here in this equation, right? So we have something known as Coriolis effect. We have something known as centrifugal effect, centripetal effects. We have gravitational forces acting on the system. We have the inertia of the system coming from the Newton's idea, right? So governing these laws, we need to apply the torque or force, which is shown on the right hand side, which is tau, right? We apply torques and force on the system in such a way that we get the desirable behavior, right? So this is the equation of motion that we deal with in our research, in our work, right? So to give you some idea, okay, so I have this dynamical system, right? And I want to achieve something. For example, I want to keep this pole vertical. So I have this pole and then I have this cart, right? And the pole is freely rotating around the cart on the right hand side, right? The goal is to keep the pole vertical. So the force that I'm applying is applied in such a way that the pole is close to vertical, right? So we have ultimate boundedness. The goal is to achieve, so when I say ultimately bounded, right, the pole has to be close to the vertical as much as possible, right? So you can think of this red circle on the left hand side is a small region in which the pole has to be there, right? So the pole being inside this red region implies that the pole is very close to the vertical, right? So this is what I want, and this is what practical use cases are, right? So in this case, we want to achieve this boundedness, and we want to apply the force F on the cart in such a way that this is satisfied, right? And there are several ways of doing this, right? So here on the right hand side below, I have a little video which shows the different types of controllers that can be applied, right? So here on the second and the third ones were applied successfully, and the first one is a controller that did not work really well, right? So we actually do these kinds of iterations. We apply different types of controllers and see which one works, right? So the second one and the third one worked, right? And not just that, as you can notice, it's not perfectly vertical, right? It's actually oscillating around the vertical region, right? In other words, it's actually inside this red circle, right? So it's always close, but never exactly zero. This is what we have in our system also. So this is a practical scenario. Now with this, let's talk about walking. Let's talk about how to use this dynamics idea, this control, and then boundedness idea in the field of stock and stock 2, right? So the goal is to achieve walking, right? And like I mentioned before, walking is an extremely hard problem, and people have been working on this for quite a long time. We have quite a few robotic systems being tested here. So this is actually a part of the robotics challenge, right? So these robots, they walk and then they fall down, right? So walking is an extremely hard problem, and we have thousands of problems that we need to deal with. So let me play this for a moment just to digest the fact that walking is not an easy problem. This was actually in 2016 or 2017, so not so long ago. And almost all of the robots had these kinds of problems. So none of them were working really well. So if it's not even able to walk properly in a well-designed environment like this, then we can't even actually talk about walking in a farmland. We have a long way to go. Right. So with that, let me go to the next slide. Okay. So we have used machine learning concepts to realize walking. And it's not just us that has worked on it. You know, companies like Google have used machine learning. In fact, the idea of reinforcement learning to achieve walking. So here on the left-hand side, we have this robot, little robot, achieving walking by using reinforcement learning. So machine learning ideas. On the right-hand side, we have this robot, a bigger robot, very, very robust controller. So kick the robot does not fall over. Right? So all of these use the idea of reinforcement learning, and that's what I want to introduce here. And there are several positives to take from these deep learning ideas, because we have seen an explosion in AI, and there are a lot of positives to take from it. Number one, there are a lot of tools that are available, like TensorFlow, Torch, simulators, GPUs, TPUs, which can be used. They are widely available right now. Number two, they are all easy to understand. There are hundreds of online resources which we can use to make this happen, right? Secondly, this idea of machine learning brings in the idea of exploration, which actually we did not think of before, right? So this trade-off between exploitation and exploration is actually very, very useful, because here the goal is to actually make the robot learn how to walk, right? So reinforcement learning allows us to explore this system forever. Right. So in order to bring in some perspective, so here is stock walking. So this is the first version of the walking robot developed in ISC. We have a manually tuned walking robot. In March 28, it was barely walking, but fast forward a few months, we were able to use this idea of machine learning, to be more particular, the idea of reinforcement learning on this walking, to realize this. As you can see, the slow motion version of this robot itself is much faster than the normal walking speed of the robot on the left, right? So in terms of efficiency, it is much, much better. So here is the general framework that we use to realize walking. So we have a little walking controller. We have a little box where we show the walking controller, right? It's usually a tracking controller with some auxiliary inputs. And this walking controller sends in some actuations, some action values, right? So we have actuation and then we have sensing, right? The sensing uses some sensory values and then sends it to the controller, and the controller uses the actuation to actuate the robot, right? So with this walking controller, we have a policy network which we want to use, right? Let's say I want to use a deep neural network, right? I use the same idea. I sense the values and then feed the actuation, right? So any questions so far?
Sir, I think in chat box they posed questions.
Oh, chat box has some questions? Great.
Yes.
How do I access it?
So someone asked, that is Siddhartha Shankar, what are the parameters?
Which parameter? Oh, the parameter theta?
I think somebody said Siddhartha. I would like to call upon Siddhartha Shankar Acharya. Sir? Siddhartha Shankar Acharya, sir. Hello? I think he just posted, sir.
Okay, let me read this.
Yes.
What are the parameters? Oh, you asked this long time ago. Okay, like several minutes ago.
Yes, sir.
Were you referring to parameters in the manipulator?
I think he's
in the early parts of the presentation?
Siddhartha. Professor Siddhartha. Hello? Hello? I think he's not there.
So Richa also has a question. Could you please repeat it?
Richa Chandra. Ma'am, Richa ma'am. Hello.
Yes, sir. Now I got it. Actually, sir already repeated.
Yes. What you want exactly? Can you ask our resource person, ma'am?
Yeah, actually, when he was telling about the joints and all, so that was I didn't get it. So now it's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions so far on this slide?
Dear participant, do you have any questions, queries? Hello.
No,
Hello.
sir.
Yeah, ma'am. Please, ma'am. So unmute yourself and just ask, ma'am. Subha, ma'am.
Oh, there are new messages. Let me check.
So what is this DNN?
Oh, DNN. Okay. So deep neural network. So DNN is a deep neural network. And this is what all the AI machine learning community use, right? They use a neural network and then they train this neural network in such a way that we get these behaviors.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, shall we continue?
Okay. Let's continue then. Okay. So we have this neural network system applied on the system. Okay. Right. So generally we have actuations as torque values or desired command, desired angles, and so on and so forth, right? Similarly, we have state values as angle, velocity, torque, IMUs, and so on and so forth. So we read in these sensor values, we convert it into a state, right? And we come up with the right policy to read the state, right? Usually we change this parameter theta by looking at the reward. So reinforcement learning has to do with using the reward. So when I say reward, let's say a robot tried something, right? And it did almost close to what you wanted it to do, right? You give it a higher reward, right? So think of a little dog. We train the dog, right? Let's say we teach the dog how to pick a stick, right? Whenever it picks the stick, we give it food, right? We give the dog some goodies, cookies or any kind of delicacy. So it's something similar here, right? Whenever we see that the robot is doing something that we wanted, we give it a reward, right? Like positively reinforcing the fact that, okay, whatever you're doing is correct. So please do more of it. So this is where we use this idea of reinforcement learning, where the reward is used as an input to update the parameter space theta, right? So we have this reward and we have this parameter space theta, right? And with this reward, for example, here reward is nothing but the distance traveled minus the energy consumed. In other words, we want to minimize the energy consumed and also maximize the distance traveled, right? So with this reward function, we update the parameter theta, right? So this is reinforcement learning. So any questions here? Oh, I see a question here. What is the difference between ANN and DNN?
Yes.
So artificial neural network and deep neural network. So artificial neural networks is actually an older concept. Deep is a more recent one, but DNN also can be called as an artificial neural network, right? It's actually, it comes under the umbrella of ANN. So neural network, as we all know, right? Neurons, right? Our human body has neurons, right? And bringing this idea of artificially creating these systems, right? And that's why we have artificial intelligence, artificial neural networks, and so on and so forth, right? So deep neural network is a specific form of an artificial neural network where there are a lot of layers, right? If you look at the number of parameters that are there in a deep neural network, it is close to 10 lakh, 20 lakh, 30 lakhs. It's very large. That's because they use a lot of layers, right? And that's the reason why it is a deep neural network. Any other question?
So I would like call upon participant. Do you have any queries, please? Hello. If you
Yeah.
have someone said.
Okay, I see one more question.
Yes.
Is it related to neurons and synapse of human body? Yes, the neurons, yes, the idea of using the neural network is actually, it is inspired from neurons. Although I do not, although we have to understand that the deep neural network does not really represent the neural network that is inside our body. It is only, it is not exactly what it is, but it's inspired from that. So let me put it that way. So the next question is how to reduce energy consumption. Good question. We can reduce energy consumption by reducing the torques being applied to each and every joint, right? The style of walking itself tells you how much energy you have consumed. In other words, the style of walking will shape the energy, right? Like if you walk with our knees bent, right, then the energy consumption is larger. If you walk with the knees straight, completely straight, again it is larger. So it is somewhere in between, right? And it is actually specific to each and every body, right? Because each of us have our own physical parameters, right? And that actually affects the walking gait significantly. Design level concept. So I'm just understanding the layout. That is the next question. Although I did not follow. Well, Murugan, can you ask this question again?
Now ask.
If not, then let me go to the next question. What is the criteria for deciding number of layers? Okay, good question. This is actually not easy. We use close to 2 layers. Although people with the vision research use a lot more layers, like maybe even 20, 30, 40 layers. How to reduce? Oh, again, the question has been repeated again. Okay, yeah. So I've already answered that question. Any other questions?
So,
okay, let me go forward.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we use this specific form of reinforcement learning called policy gradient. Policy gradient has to do with there's a lot of theory that has gone behind using this policy gradient. And the idea is actually based on using this policy, right? So policy gradient basically tells me, okay, if I have a high reward because I applied this action, I want to use more and more of that policy, right? And this idea of using this policy gradient actually helps me do this, right? So we use a lot of these policy gradient techniques to realize walking. So here on the left, we have this example of the training procedure at the beginning. Oh, sorry. Okay, so the left video is not working for some reason. Okay, I'll show the right video. The right video shows walking in the middle of the training, right? And it's actually barely somehow trying to figure out how to walk, right? So, and notice it's continuously calculating the energy consumed, continuously calculating the distance traveled, right? And after 4 hours, we have walking. So in other words, it's able to continuously improve the rewards as a function of time. Right? Finally, we implemented on the robot in this corner. So while the video is being played again, I can take any questions. How to decide training method to work? So the question is how to decide the training method for the network. Dr. Ram Prakash, can you be more specific? Can you ask this question again? Okay, so let me roughly try to answer. So there are quite a few training methodologies that are in use. Some are effective for some use cases, others are effective for other types of use cases. So there is a variation, and we decide based on what is useful for us. So in our case, we use a lot of policy gradient based techniques, and that's the reason why we have this training method. But training methodology in general itself is a big area, and that requires a careful look at the problem statement, more importantly. I hope that kind of answers your question. Okay, let me go to the next video. So, sorry, next section. So now let me talk about Stock 2. Stock 2 is actually a second version of Stock 1, where we have made a lot of improvements in the robot, right? The legs are metallic and a lot of hardware improvements have been made, right? And just to give you an indication of where we were at the beginning, this was in February 2019, right? It was barely walking. And fast forward a few months and it's already walking really well, very, very robustly. Right? So here we are actually using this as a gate generating platform, right? So to just give you an idea of, okay, we have policy gradients, right? What more can we do? And we can, yes, we can do a lot more than that. And we are going to use trajectory generators. And that was the goal in this project. So here we have this little video of cat walking. Not sure why it does not play. So it plays when it is. It plays when I'm not sharing the screen, but for some reason it does not work here. Okay, so let me continue. So here we have this cat walking on the treadmill. And the point here that I was trying to make was this cat is able to walk really well, despite the fact that the spinal cord is severed. In fact, this is a very interesting problem statement for biologists, right? In other words, actually the patterns are generated at the spinal cord level, right? So we are using this idea of using this neural network at the spinal cord to generate these trajectories. On the right hand side, we are seeing a very similar trend. So on the right hand side, we have this walking data captured from humans. And we can see that the fit, that is the red, on the data, which is the gray, is actually a really good one. This is actually with a very high correlation. And what's interesting is that this trajectory is actually a very simple function. In fact, it's a it's a low order polynomial, right? My point being, instead of actually applying the system directly, the goal was to actually use a trajectory generator on the system, right? So we have this reinforcement learning framework, and then we update these parameters in such a way that the trajectories are modulated accordingly, right? So here we have this walking. On this robot accordingly. So we have these trajectories being applied on the system. So I hope the video is clear. Okay, any questions so far?
Your participants, do you have any queries? I think somewhere Ram Prakash. Okay, so let me go to the next slide. Like I mentioned, I used policy gradient techniques, right? And there are, like I mentioned, there are quite a few techniques. And one of the questions was, what is the criteria for using the right training technique, which training method to use for this network? So there are quite a few, and this is one example where we have quite a few methods: evolutionary strategies, policy gradients, model-based techniques,
actocritic methods, Pilko, episodic, and they have their own power. They have their own strengths. And depending on the application, we have to choose the right one accordingly. For robotic systems, I can say that policy gradient techniques and evolutionary strategies have been very, very powerful. So my next step is actually to focus on evolutionary strategies, because that is the natural next step here. Having used policy gradients, evolutionary strategies are also equally powerful in the field of robotics. And that's what I'm going to show. In fact, I'm going to use a specific form of an evolutionary strategy you call the augmented random search. So in evolutionary strategy, the technique is actually very, very intuitive. It has to do with evolution, Darwin's theory of evolution, right? So in evolutionary strategies, we try out, let's say, 10 different types of controllers, right? Once these 10 controllers are tested on the system, we choose the 5 best ones, right? So this 5 is an arbitrary number. I can choose 2 best ones or the 3 best ones, or 5 or 6, or even we can even rank them accordingly, right? And we kill the remaining bad ones. So in augmented random search, for example, we have this trajectory, for example, right? This is an input trajectory, and this leg is simply trying to follow this input trajectory, right? And as time progresses, right, these trajectory shapes get shaped accordingly, right? The shape actually turns into something like this, right? So in evolutionary strategies, we have, let's say, n different controllers that we want to try, right? And then we get n different rewards. Like I mentioned, we only pick the good ones and kill the remaining ones. Classical evolution, right? Survival of the fittest. We use the best ones and then update the parameter theta. So this is my new parameter, new training parameter, right? And with this, we have achieved a library of behaviors. So here is one example. So here we have walking on the top left, walking backwards, top right, turning bottom left, sidestepping bottom right. So we have a library of behaviors now. They're all very, very efficient and very, very robust, right? So, okay, sorry, let me stop here for a while. Okay, so we have this result. So any questions so far? Did everybody get to understand the evolutionary strategies?
Your participants, please. Hello. Dear participant, do you have any queries? Hello.
No, sir.
Okay, just to confirm, Karthik, are you there? I saw your message.
Yes, sir, is there, I think.
Karthik is there? Okay.
Yeah, sir, I'm there.
Okay, great.
Shall I make a co-host for Karthik, sir?
Yeah, so Karthik, I'll take maybe 20 minutes more.
Okay.
And then, yeah, Dr. Venugopal, you can make him the co-host later.
Sir, Karthik, that was right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just make the co-host, sir. Yeah, I just made you co-host.
Okay. So let me go further. So let me talk about the next steps. We obviously have agriculture, not only agriculture, we have construction, we have transportation, a lot of other areas in mind. Agriculture is certainly my top priority. And as you can see, the robot that we have actually in our lab is actually a very small robot. It's not a big robot. You could have made the comparison by looking at this person, right? So comparison with the foot, it's mostly 2 times the length of the foot, right? So this robot is not all that big. And that's the reason why we decided to go for the next robot, which is Stock 3. So Stock 3 is going to be much bigger. And hopefully we should be able to get this walking robustly. And once that is done, we are going to go and we are going to go ahead and actually test it on different kinds of terrains, including farmlands, right? So we have this Stock 3 and we have it working partially in simulation. For example, it's able to walk straight and it's able to do backflips, right? And this is still under production. We still need to buy parts. We need to test the controllers. We need to make sure that nothing is breaking. So we have a long way to go. And this is in collaboration with the faculty, Bharat, Shala, Shitawa, Goshen, who are from the Robert Bosch Center for Cyber-Physical Systems, right? So we are developing a bigger, stronger quadruped Stock 3 in IAC, right? And hopefully by next year end, maybe if there is an opportunity for me to again give a talk, I should be able to talk about the results on Stock 3, hopefully, right? So this is the top version, top view of Stock 3. And right hand side are the milestones. So we want to finish building it by the end of 2020. And then by the end of 2021 December, we would like to make it walk on a diverse set of rough terrains, including roadways, right? Where the terrain variations are not all that huge. It's not significantly large. It's fairly high, high enough to test the robustness, right? So
their own shelter.
So just to give you our vision at the Center for Cyber-Physical Systems,
the seekers are
we are actually interested, not only interested in AI, right? We are actually interested in deploying AI in a real hardware, because that is where the real challenge is right now. We can see this on the left-hand side, we have this mind, right? And this is actually an interesting video released by OpenAI, right? Here we have the red clowns and then the blue clowns, right? The goal of the red clown is, you can call them the police, are trying to capture the blue, who are the thieves. So the police are trying to capture the thieves. And at the same time, the thieves are preventing them from spotting them. So they're trying to hide and they are using these boxes, right? And all of these strategies that they develop are very, very emergent. For example, here we have these thieves, developing all kinds of barriers around themselves, right? And these are all emergent. Like, we did not teach them how to do this. This came automatically, right? And this is the power of AI machine learning, and that's the reason why, obviously, I believe is the reason why IIPM is also hosting a conference, a workshop based on this, because there's a lot of power to this, right? And on the right hand side, we have this robot who can do some remarkable backflips, right? And this is actually a robot from the Boston Dynamics doing amazing behaviors, but these are not taught to the system. The robot does not learn these kinds of behaviors. These are all coded, hard coded by a human, right? And that is where the difference is. So we want to reach to a point where we can actually combine body and mind to reach human level performances. In other words, if we want to achieve in a robotic system, like how we achieve, even compare a small baby, right, who can figure out a bunch of things all by himself, herself, how to achieve, right? So these are all very complicated things, and these are not easy, right? So in other words, we have on the right hand side these amazing results in hardware by Boston Dynamics, by Google's Waymo car, driverless car technology, and so on and so forth. And on the left hand side, at the top of the graph, we have these amazing machine learning AI based results from OpenAI, Google, DeepMind, Microsoft, Facebook, and a lot of other companies, right? And the goal is to move beyond these two, right? We want to combine body and mind. In other words, we want to give a body to the results given by Google, and we want to give mind to the results provided by Boston Dynamics, right? So we want to go here, and that's where the goal is, right? So robots like humans alongside humans, building autonomous systems that improve the quality of life, right? So to give you an example, I already showed this little dancing robot, right? This was hard-coded. So now the question is, why not let the robot figure out the dance moves by itself? right? So that is one intelligent behavior that we can think of, right? So there's a lot of creativity that is involved. We have walking in simulation. We have walking in the hardware, but the training does not actually happen in hardware. This is something that I never pointed out, but this is actually a fact. We never train this walking in hardware. We first train it in the simulation, and then once it is fully trained, we deploy it on hardware. So we want to talk about training in hardware itself, something like an online kind of way, right? Similarly, imitation learning. In fact, we are actually doing something similar. Like we have this peg in the hole task in the simulation, and we are able to implement this training procedure in the hardware itself. It required a lot of work, but this is actually a start. So here we have this little video of this robot trying to insert the peg inside this hole, and the clearance is actually very, very small. It is close to 30 micrometers, right? So 30 micrometers is actually very complex, not easy, right? So we have used a combination of control and learning to make this happen. In other words, just pure learning alone will not help. It's not enough. We need to do a combination, and that's what we have done, right? And not just that, when we talk about machine learning, we need to care about safety, because right now, unfortunately, there are no guarantees of safety. People are talking about driverless cars today, but nobody is talking about how safe they are, right? Because it's actually done by a learning agent, and the learning can be very complex, right? And there are no guarantees to safety when it comes to learning, right? And if you are familiar with Asimov's, how many of you have seen the movie iRobot? Not many of you may have seen it. iRobot is actually, I think the lead was Will Smith. So in that movie iRobot, the computer, right, takes over the world by simply deploying more and more of robots, right? This is against the first law of robotics, right? A robot may not injure a human being, or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm, right? The current control framework that we have do not satisfy Asimov's first law of robotics itself. And this first law of robotics is actually a very old law, right? It came in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, in that time period. So we have a long way to go. We have no guarantees at all when it comes to safety of a human being around these robotic systems. And we are obviously doing a lot of this work. For example, we are making sure that all of this is safety is our priority in our lab, right? If you come to our lab, you will see this notice in our lab, outside our lab, safety is our biggest priority, and the director always keeps us asking questions on safety aspects. And that's why we are compelled to do these things. And we are already doing significant work in that direction. So here is an example of a drone, right? The goal was to go to the destination point, but there is a safety boundary, and that is this this brown region, right? So the brown region is where the safety region is. It's not supposed to go outside. Even though the target point is outside the boundary, the robot should not go outside. And we are able to get it working in simulation, and it's only a matter of time before you deploy it in the system, right? So here is the robot where it's doing this burger flipping, transportation, not flipping. It's actually moving from left to right. And suddenly, when I throw a box, right, the robot has to detect that there is a box and it has to stop immediately. So this is actually safety critical control happening in real time. And this is actually very, very important. So with that, let me finish and let me hand over the presentation to Karthik. In the meantime, if there is any question, I can probably ask them. Okay, so there is already a question by Kishore. Artificial intelligence in agriculture is new and trending topic in the present Indian scenario. Much more research certainly needs to be done to suit robots and drones for small and marginal land holdings, which is likely constitute 70% in Indian agriculture. So how does an agriculture engineer proceed in this area of specialization who has no basic knowledge in electronics, but knowing nothing much about soil and plants? Okay, so I guess the question is for small land holdings where there is a farmer who is an expert on how to farm, right? who is an expert in plants and soil, but has no knowledge about the electronics or the technology or the machine learning or the robotics, right? So this is where we have to talk about involvement of a bigger community, right? It's not like one person can do it all. So we have to understand that we are in an age where interdisciplinarity, collaborative effort is actually very, very important, right? Take the example of vaccine development. Vaccine development itself, as we all know, several countries are involved in making this happen, right? And there are several research labs who are collaborating with each other, right? And this is not only true in a country like India, this is true in Europe and America itself, right? So when we talk about developing new technology, new methodologies, there has to be a greater involvement of communities from various backgrounds, right? And we at IAC also stress on this fact, right? I know I'm not really a farmer, even though my father is. I have a long way to go when it comes to farming, right? I do not even have the basic knowledge on how to grow basic produce. But I'm more than willing to take inputs from the farming community and make this happen, right? So, and this is not something that can be done overnight, right? I understand 70% of the land holdings is marginal land holdings. But there are several strategies, there are several solutions that can be deployed even in that scenarios. Right now, my focus is to actually make it work, right? Get it to work in a farmland. We are not even in a situation where we can say we have a solution, right? We only have walking. We have a long way to go. But this is something in the pipeline that we can think of. So did I answer that question, Kishore?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so Karthik, any other questions? Shall we use the robot for collecting samples of coronavirus from human body for testing purposes? That's a good point, and I believe there are some companies that have tried it, but also understand collecting samples. The biggest challenge is actually using the procedure for collecting the sample, right? Where you have to insert that thing inside the nose, right? So I don't think robot technology is mature enough for doing such a thing, because even though robots are not safe, and I don't think we are actually in a situation where we can do such a thing. Even if you are able to do that, it will be super expensive, and I do not think it can beat the Indian labor at the moment, right? I think that the need of the hour for the coronavirus pandemic is planning, is logistics, and actually quite a few research faculty in IAC themselves are trying to work on trying to do the logistics. For example, there are testing kits available, let's say in Belgaum, right? There is an excess of testing kits, not a lot of cases, right? In other words, the testing labs are more or less, testing very few samples per day, way below their capacity, right? While the testing labs in Bangalore are over the capacity. Now, can we think of a logistics like a planner where we actually can transport the testing kits, or maybe transport the samples from one lab to another in order to get faster results? So that is actually more of a logistics planning optimization problem that can be actually addressed right now, and people are doing it already. In fact, the healthcare in Bangalore, Karnataka Healthcare Department itself is using that solution to make this happen. But deploying a robot for collecting samples, I think, is not economical at this moment, because it's still not easy to. Robots still cannot beat Indian labor in terms of economy. So we have a long way to go, right? So even when it comes to robotics in the field of agriculture, we can look at specific areas where safety is of prime importance, right? And that's the reason why I showed the example of climbing. Climbing, yes, it's a safety issue, because going up the tree is actually very risky for a human being. So that's where we can think of using a robot. Surveillance is still not in the pipeline, because again, you can always send a farmer to walk around the farm, because he does this round anyway. Every morning he gets up and he looks at each and every plant and he comes back home, right? So that's not a difficult task which anybody can do, right? So we need to focus on problems which are risky. And I think climbing is a great avenue for it, for this to happen. Any other question?
I think is question from Ishwarappan. It is Dr. M. N. Ishwarappan. Shall we use the robotics for collecting the samples? That is what you explained, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that is what I explained.
So, Karthik, you want to take over?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've
Let
stopped
me
sharing.
share it. Host disable. So can you make me host
Yeah,
again?
already I hosted it.
It is showing host disabled participant screen sharing.
One second. Again, I host. Okay. Done. Please check it.
Yeah. Now it is. Okay.
Yes.
My screen is visible?
Yeah, it is visible.
Okay. So hello everyone. I'm Karthik from RobotBoss Center. I'm here to give a short tutorial on how we do learning on our platform Stock2. So here is a design to development process. So instead of learning directly on real robot, we first learn locomotion gates on a simulation. So as Professor explained, we care a lot about safety. So we first do training experiments in a simulator, and then we deploy the train policy on a real robot. It is much cheaper and safer, and also it gives a lot of data because because a lot of compute is available these days, so we can perform a lot of experiments simultaneously. So this is more data, and it is rich in data. So first, to get a simulation model of the robot, we first design the robot in a CAD design software. There are software like SolidWorks, AutoCAD, so where you can build your robot. So whatever the mechanism you have for links, legs, leg motion, and all those. Like here we have a 5-bar linkage mechanism for the legs. So we designed that and attached the torso and everything like motors and everything. So after designing the robot, we import the robot model in a physics engine. So there are few quite a good physics engine like PyBullet, Mojako, which provide which actually helps us simulating the dynamics of the like environment, like say, contacts, gravitational forces, inertia of the robot. So, as Professor explained, like while controlling a robot, there are a lot of dynamics involved, like gravitational force, inertia, and you also have like contacts, frictions, everything. So in the simulator, we actually use such a dynamics information and build our own environment to trotting, turning, and others. So we mainly use PyBullet because of its simplicity, and it's and we can develop the environment in Python, which is quite simpler language. So after training the gates like trotting, turning, and like other gates, like we have more robust gates which can walk on slopes, stairs. So these gates are then deployed on the real robot. There are quite a few sim to real gap which we try to narrow down. So here is our robot, which is built using servo motors and 3D printed parts. Some parts are laser cut, and we have a microcontroller on that. So which actually hold the policy of trained policy. So I will give a short detail about how a robot model looks like. So so to define a robot model, there are few formats. So one of the famous format is URDF. It is actually a XML. So where you can define your links, joints. So as in the beginning, sir has explained that a robot consists of links and joints. So the URDF consists consists of this information, where what is the axis of the links, what is the inertia of the link. I will show how the XML of our robot looks like. So you can see this is the motor joint, which is at upper knee. So it is a revolute joint, and it has the axis at this axis at this location. So this joint has a parent link as front left body abduction link, and the child link is front left upper knee link. So in between two links there is one joint. So here are the other dynamic properties like damping, friction. Yeah. So in this way, the robot URDF is built. It is a tree structure. So now I will quickly tell you how we actually build the simulation. How can we build a simulation environment? So once you got a URDF, you load that URDF in a simulator. Then we create functions like reset, assign motor IDs, get observations, etc. So once the robot is loaded, we have to reset the joints in a initial positions. So for our robot, we reset the robot joints to a standing position so that it stands at the beginning. Stand at the beginning. Then we assign the motor IDs to each joint, so it helps in controlling the specific motor. So after that, we define a trajectory controller. So it is the foot end effector trajectory controller, which defines how should a trajectory of the robot should be defined. So we use elliptical trajectory controller. We have used Bezier curves for defining the trajectory. So different trajectories can be used in that controller. So after that, we have to define a reward model for our training process, and we have to define some termination conditions like if the robot fall down, it should terminate. If the robot like if we have taken a lot of steps, like if the simulation steps go beyond 100 steps, we need to terminate. So I will explain more about rewarding and all reward model in the later part. So here is our trajectory controller. It is a simple elliptical trajectory. So you can see it, parametric form of a trajectory controller. So x comma y in a 2D plane can be defined by a cos theta and b sin theta. So this trajectory generator runs at some frequency. So we use the omega is that frequency of the trajectory controller, which helps in to generate the trajectory points of that trajectory point. So after we get a trajectory point in a Cartesian coordinate, we do inverse kinematics to calculate the motor angles to basically track to track that point. After that, so basically this is a trajectory which can be parameterized by different things. So in our one of the controller, we parameterize this elliptical controller by this varying the height of this minor axis of this ellipse, major axis of this ellipse, and we also parameterize by rotation axis of the ellipse. Like we also rotate the ellipse in about y-axis. So such are the parameters we are interested to learn. Then, like the robot, so the robot will accordingly modify this parameter. So suppose the robot has got a command to walk fast, it will adjust its step length to make it far long to make bigger steps so that it can walk fast. So this thing will this parameter will be decided by the policy. So as already explained, we use reinforcement learning. So we have sensors on the robot, which gives us the state information, which includes motor angles, orientation of the robot, and this information is passed to our agent, which takes the action basically. So I think the arrows are wrong. So action arrow should be like this here. So sorry, action, it is right only. So yeah, this is the agent which takes the state information and use the policy we have right now and multiply that state with the policy to give a action. So we take that action, again we get a new state information. In this way, we execute our policies. So in that in that process, we after every step we receive a reward. This reward tells us how good that step is. So I will now right now I will show how our environments look in the code. So here is the environment code. So first we load the environment, load the robot. Let me show the particular function. Yeah, so here we load first the ground plane, then we load the robot, After that, we have written some conditions, how to reset the like conditions for standing positions. So the thing I was talking about, like initially the robot, when the robot first initially start on like begin the simulation, it needs to stand on its own place, so it needs to reset its joint to particular angles. So then we have functions for getting observations. So here is the thing. So like in the flow diagram, like our agent receives the current state of from the environment. So this is the function which helps us to acquire the state of the information. So here we have, so as you can see here, we have a orientation history, like orientation history data. Then we have the ground support plane orientation. So we can add more information in that according to the tasks we are interested. So these are the few other functions like get motor angles. What is the current state of the motor's positions, and what are the motor velocities, joint velocities, and where is the base located in the world position. This is function we have written for that. So there are PyBullet has it's a library which has a lot of functions, like inbuilt functions to helper functions like get base position and orientation. We just have to pass the URDF 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 model in that. So here your robot model is being passed in that function. So this is how we build the simulation environment. Now we'll show how actually the elliptical trajectory controller look like in the simulation. So this is our simulator. I have loaded the robot and I have kept the robot at a fixed position. So the red, in the red, the trajectory is you can see the trajectory in the red. So it is currently a semi-elliptical trajectory which is being tracked by the robot. We can use any other different trajectory. So this is a simulator. Like, we can have different view angles. We can
Mr. Karthik, it is not coming.
we focus on evolutionary statistics, which is very simple and like draws principle from natural selection process. So we create a we create a samples of policy matrix, and from that like we generate a random we generate a random policy samples of policy matrix, and from that samples the policy which gives better reward that are chosen for the next update. So just like in the natural selection process, where the fitness of the population is evaluated, and according to that, the next population is being mutated and uh, regenerated. So is the technique is similar to that. Just here, instead of population, we have policy parameter, a policy parameter. So I will show some of the some of the how the training process happens from the beginning. So it is a policy. When the policy was training, it is at the very beginning stage. So you can see the robot is not able to walk properly. So in few iterations after training, it has learned to walk a little bit, but you can see it is walking sideways and sometimes rotate. So in the next iteration, it has learned to walk a little bit straight. Still, it is moving sideways. And in the final best policy, it has learned to walk straight up the hill. So here is how a reward graph look during a training process. So initially, it at the very beginning of the training process, it achieves very low reward. Then it tries to when it then it tries to update the policy and move to better state of the policy. And after some few iteration, it converges, and we have a steady state reward. So after this convergence, we use the policy at this stage and deploy on the real robot. So I will show few more results of our policy. So right now I will modify the orientation of the incline. So now the robot is moving uphill. Similarly, we have achieved locomotion on downhill. You can see the robot is moving down the slope now. We have few more challenging environments like stairs. Yeah. So after after this, we have again a result where we try to robustify the policy by applying external forces. So here's another demo of that. So you can see there is 100 Newton force being acted on the robot to disturb the robot. Still, the robot is able to stabilize itself and walk forward. We apply different forces. Still, the robot is able to stabilize itself. Now 60 Newton force was applied on the robot. I can also disturb through my mouse, but it was way too much force. So see, after applying a lot like external perturbation, the robot still able to balance itself. So this much of robustification we have done in our policies. So so this is the end result, basically like showing slope, walking on slopes on any arbitrary inclination and orientation. So this is a track we built. You can see there are different wedges being joined at different inclination. There are stairs, there are pyramids. Maybe we can see the entire video. YouTube. So it is able to climb a very challenging, which is a pyramid. Yeah, so these are some of the results we have for walking on different terrains. We are working on vision related tasks too on the robot. Now let me show some of the why it is not. I think there's some issue with my yeah. So here we are trying to basically for climbing any like unknown terrain like stairs and all. So stairs is a very difficult environment for robot to walk. So in our previous research, we use a staircase of standard dimension. That's why it is able to climb up. But and it was also trained for that stairs. That's why it was able to climb up that. But suppose if we modify the stairs to different like stairs of different height, like if the stairs of different pattern, like the risers and steps are of different dimensions, then we required like good vision capabilities in the robot. So in a like in a side research, we were trying to identify this thing, like what are the physical properties of a stairs. So we use we use stereo cameras, like which can give you a point cloud, which is actually a depth data of any environment. So here you can see a 3D stairs point cloud data in 3D. So here we have calculated using some 3D geometry what is the step height, step width, and what is the step length. So step height is a very important parameter to for the robot, so that it can adjust its that height of the ellipse where it should place it foot. So this these parameters will be added in the state of the robot, and will be used in the reinforcement learning to generate the actions accordingly. So before creating a stairs, before knowing the before knowing first of all, we should also able to know if it is a staircase or not. So here we have developed a stair detection algorithm. You can see it is able to identify the stairs. After identifying the stair location, we will use our 3D depth algorithm to identify the parameters of any stairs. So here I conclude about our entire training process we have done. I will hand over to Shishir sir. Hello. Shishir sir, are you there? Hello. Am I audible? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So any doubt anybody have?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm Siddharth. May I know what is that software in which you have shown all those things and the parameters and all those things?
So we are using PyBullet simulator.
Pardon, sir, what?
PyBullet. I will type in the chat box also.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
It is an open source library. Anybody can use it daily. Any other questions, queries? Okay, so I will conclude. The respective host, can you give a conclusion? Hello, Shishir sir is there? I think he's not there right now.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Karthik sir, is coming
Yeah, I'm done.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Coming for today's session, I noted point especially. I would like to thank to Dr. Shishir sir, especially starting from how you started about the robotics, played an important role in all technology, especially when you talk about robotics, how you just.
Bunty, yes, neither a backbencher nor a fastbencher. I am a fan के नीचे bencher.
Yeah, some disturbance. Yes, we started from how the cost of robotics was transformed from 30-40 lakhs to 10 lakhs during the 2007 to 17. Really, you just mentioned very good, sir. That equation mention also, motion also, how you just shown that also very good, sir. And you just give an outline how you have shared about the walking of robotics, how it is difficult, how codings are going to be involved in multiple codings and multiple programming parts by walking of any robotics. It's really fantastic. So what we are seeing in generally without before this lecture, I come to know robotics, we belongs to management, we belongs to social science perspective. We come to know by seeing the any like videos or any movies. We thought that it's very easy, just programming only going to be behind that function of any robotics. But I come to know that by seeing today's session, you explained about that how a single walk of any robotic is going to be take a very difficult task. Really, you started from your undergraduation, what your project, your post-graduation, your doctoral, and how your post-doctoral research work transformed, like single walk to dance, again walking, running, and again food sector related that you are going to be launching your robotics. It's a really very good transformation we have just identified, sir. It's really good. And coming to the Mr. Karthik also explained very good about how design and deployment of process. That 3 stages, how you explained very good. That is a CAD design and the physical simulators and robotic, real robotics, how it transform these 3 levels. It's really very informative sessions. I would like to call upon FTP team. Can I have a vote of thanks?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon to all. I'm very grateful for having given the chance to extend a vote of thanks to everyone present here. On behalf of the Indian Institute of Plantation Management and the FTP team, I would like to extend a special thanks to Dr. Shishir and Mr. Karthik for their valuable time and all the information they shared with us. Sir, we hope and wish your project gets successful soon and benefit the agriculture sector as well. Now, no event can be successful without people who dedicate their resources and time. I wish to express my endless gratitude to all the participants for making this section a wonderful learning experience. Thank you.
Dear participant, a small announcement for you. I would like to tell you, I would like to share you. See, afternoon session, don't miss it. This is very, very important session, especially not only for the engineering background, life science background, or we go for social science background. It's very, very important for blockchain technology. Our resource person from Professor Subramaniam Nachaipan is from University of Sensex Business School from UK. Is going to be covering blockchain and its application for the first session, first hour, and second going to be covering Kane software, how it is going to be implemented for fast food chain warehouse location. I would like to tell you, clarify you one thing, blockchain technology, how it is booming in not only for agri sector, not only for food processing, in all these sectors. Even if you look out of how blockchain technology going to be adapted by these some banks, fintech, and other financial companies, and other social science companies, or social science subject also. I would like to call upon that. Please don't miss it this session. I'm sure that you will enjoy, and you will definitely find out some research gaps, and there is a scope to identify some research proposal. Please try to ask a questions. Please try to clarify, and please get a benefit from the sessions. I would like to call upon each and every participant. You try to pose more questions, then only you can learn more. AICT Atal Academy panel people also observing, and definitely I would like to see why we are organizing this program, because of to benefit to the all academicians, right? So we are seeing only few or very few, a few are just posing a questions, they're clarifying their subject, their whatever doubts. I would like call upon, please try to make it utilize for proper way of enriching your skills. As we are talking about blockchain, AI, machine learning, deep learning, these are coming years, we have a more demand. Irrespective whether you're science, social science, engineering background, whatever it is, you should tie up. This is a multidisciplinary learning perspective. I think you are going to be utilizing this opportunity. And I want to clarify another one. More people are going to be posted in a group. I would like to tell you, a committee also decided we are going to be sharing YouTube link for all these sessions. You should go through that. It is not possible to share PPTs because some real-time projects they're working on, some legal issues we are going to be take a problem. So we are going to be sharing all YouTube links, each and every session. Please go through that. See, your MC questions depends upon whatever talk happened in your sessions. It's as simple as. Okay. Is there any clarification? Is there any clarification? Is there any you want to ask? Dear participant, hello? Hello?
No, sir.
No, sir. No more
Is
questions.
it clear, sir? Is it clear?
Yes,
So
sir.
how
it
many
is clear.
questions will be there in this MCQ?
See, totally we are going to be focusing only 50 questions.
Okay.
50
So
questions.
it's going to be easy or hard?
See, obviously, ma'am, it will be easy only, but try to please attend for sessions. It is very easy. Don't think
Yeah,
it is too hard.
actually between I was having some work, so missed in between. So it will be good if you will be sharing the YouTube link.
Yes, madam. We'll share by evening, madam. We'll share you up to today's whatever sessions happen, like first day, 2 sessions, maybe for morning session, afternoon session. Today morning session, afternoon session. 4 we are going to be sharing by evening, today evening. Please go through that, and I hope don't miss it for afternoon session. I'm sure that people will get benefited to. You should identify your own research proposals, gaps, and definitely you may propose. I'm sure I would like to tell you one thing, dear participants, dear professors. If you make use you just make any proposal by you just incorporating AI related concept, blockchain related concept, I'm sure that funding agencies are ready to give you, especially in India. Of course, you go for abroad also. Okay, thank you very much for the morning session. We are going to be completed successfully. I would like going to be concluding or going to be ending up the morning session. Again, sharp 2 o'clock, please assemble and don't miss it out. I'm sure you will get benefited from that session. Thank you, sir. Thank you all, dear participants. Shall I wind up? Okay.